If you remember circling toys in a big catalog every September, waiting 3 whole months for Christmas morning, and feeling excited the entire time without spending a dollar, welcome home. You lived the 70s Christmas. That waiting built the magic.
My big Tracy Schlub knows 38 ounce.
And when you grew up, that patience just disappears because we lose our traditions. Let's rediscover these 30 Christmas fads every 70s kid still remembers. The 1972 Sears Wish Book wasn't just a catalog. It was a war between childhood dreams and budget limits when September brought 600 pages and December brought 3-item maximums. Kids didn't need algorithms to know what mattered. They heard the heavy thump when the catalog hit the porch, felt glossy pages stick together under sweaty fingers, and circled 3 items with red pen, knowing parents kept the book until Christmas to verify what you actually wanted. Nobody taught delayed gratification. They learned it by waiting, the same way their parents knew changing circles in December meant indecision, and indecision meant disappointment. Christmas morning. 3 red circles stayed permanent for 90 days. You couldn't delete, couldn't add more, couldn't browse unlimited options. What it meant: Christmas wishes lived in permanent ink, not shopping carts. By 1995, online wish lists and instant ordering replaced catalog commitment. With time, digital shopping didn't improve anticipation, it removed it. What once lived in hands that circled and waited 3 months was outsourced to one-click purchasing, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1970 aluminum tree wasn't just decoration. It was evidence families once created rotating atmosphere when electric motors spun color wheels, and waiting 40 seconds meant watching red become blue, become green. Parents didn't need smart controls to know when the room felt magical. They heard the electric motor hum behind silver branches, watched the plastic wheel rotate through 4 colors every 40 seconds, and timed dinner so guests arrived when the tree glowed red. Nobody taught color timing. They learned it by watching, the same way their parents knew when the motor stopped, the magic froze on whatever color it dyed, and frozen blue meant Christmas lost its warmth. 4 colors rotated every 40 seconds. Red meant warm, blue meant cold, green meant neutral, amber meant cozy. What it meant? Christmas atmosphere lived in mechanical watching, not programmed sequences. By 1990, LED controllers and preset modes replaced mechanical rotation. The 1973 shiny bright ornament wasn't just decoration. It was evidence children once handled Christmas through careful touch, when thin glass shells and wire caps meant permanent loss if you dropped one. Kids didn't need shatterproof guarantees to know which ornaments survived. They heard the delicate clink when glass touched glass in cardboard boxes, felt the thin shell cool against fingertips, and hung each one knowing dropping it meant that specific pattern disappeared forever because stores sold out by December. Nobody taught material value. They learned it by breaking, the same way their parents knew hearing glass shatter on hardwood meant crying wouldn't bring it back, and broken meant gone. Thin glass required careful fingers for decades. One drop ended it. The 1974 bubble light wasn't just decoration. It was evidence families once read tree warmth through liquid motion when methylene chloride stayed still until heat triggered bubbling. Parents didn't need temperature sensors to know when the tree was ready. They watched clear liquid sit motionless for 10 minutes after plugging in, heard the first quiet pop when heat reached the tube, and counted 7 bubbles per bulb rising before calling kids to see the tree. Nobody taught heat transfer. They learned it by waiting, the same way their parents knew bubbles stopping mid-rise meant a bulb died, and one dead bulb killed the whole strand because series wiring meant all or nothing. 7 bubbles per tube rose when temperature was correct. The 1971 tinsel application wasn't just decorating. It was evidence children once built perfection through individual placement when metallic strands separated one by one meant 2 hours for a 6-foot tree. Kids didn't need decorating guides to know tinsel looked right. They heard the metallic whisper separating single strands from the box, felt static electricity pull strands to their fingers, and draped each one over individual branch tips, knowing clumps looked cheap, and parents judged your patience Christmas morning. Nobody taught perfection standards. They learned it by comparing, the same way their parents knew clumped tinsel meant you rushed, and rushed decorating meant you didn't value the result. Individual strands took 2 hours per tree, 1 strand per branch tip, no throwing handfuls, no shortcuts, no good enough acceptance. What it meant, Christmas beauty lived in single-strand patience, not speed. By 1988, tinsel garland and pre-decorated trees replaced strand-by-strand application. With time, convenience didn't improve beauty, it removed effort measurement. What once lived in fingers that separated and placed 400 individual strands was outsourced to garland wrapping, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1972 6-week wait wasn't just shipping. It was war between childhood hope and postal uncertainty when allow 4 to 6 weeks delivery meant checking the mailbox daily with 0 tracking updates. Kids didn't need order confirmations or delivery notifications to know when packages arrived. They heard the mail truck engine rumble down the street every afternoon at 2 p.m., sprinted to the mailbox, hoping for brown paper Sears packaging, and walked back empty-handed for 28 consecutive days before it finally appeared December 18th. Nobody taught them patience through uncertainty. They learned it by waiting. The same way their parents knew 4-6 weeks could mean Christmas Eve or January 3rd, and late arrival meant crying children asking why Santa's timing failed them. 6 weeks minimum with 0 status updates, no tracking numbers, no out for delivery alerts, no calling customer service to verify location. What it meant, Christmas anticipation lived in daily mailbox hope, not refresh buttons. By 1998, package tracking and guaranteed delivery dates replaced uncertainty waiting. The 1973 paper chain wasn't just decoration. It was evidence children once measured time through daily destruction when 25 construction paper loops hanging from the ceiling meant visible countdown you physically controlled. Kids didn't need digital countdown apps to know days remaining until Christmas. They tore 1 red or green loop off the chain every morning before school, heard the satisfying rip when Elmer's glue separated under pulling force, and watched the chain shrink from ceiling height to doorknob level over 4 weeks. Nobody taught them time visualization. They learned it by destruction. The same way their parents knew tearing 2 loops in 1 day meant cheating the system, and cheating meant your countdown became inaccurate and Christmas arrived when the chain lied. 25 loops glued by hand with construction paper and paste. 1 loop tear equaled 1 day closer. No skipping ahead, no adding loops back, no pausing countdown. What it meant, Christmas time lived in physical chain destruction, not screen digits. By 1992, digital countdown widgets and smartphone timers replaced paper chain tearing rituals. With time, automated countdowns didn't improve time awareness, they removed tactile measurement. What once lived in hands that tore daily loops and watched physical length shrink was outsourced to numbers on screens, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1974 TV Guide Circle wasn't just scheduling, it was evidence families once gathered through scarcity when Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer aired once annually, and missing it meant waiting 365 days for redemption. Kids didn't need streaming libraries or on-demand replay to know which night mattered. They circled December 15th in TV Guide with thick red marker 2 weeks early, reminded parents every single day not to schedule anything that night, and sat cross-legged on carpet at 7 p.m. sharp because the show started whether you were ready or not. Nobody taught them appointment viewing discipline. They learned it by missing, the same way their parents knew bathroom breaks happened during commercials only, and missing the opening song because you were still eating dinner meant you missed Rudolph's nose lighting up for another full year. One annual airing with zero rewind capability. Miss it and wait 12 months. No recording, no streaming catch-up, no watch it tomorrow options. What it meant: Christmas TV lived in scheduled gathering, not individual viewing. By 1995, VHS recording and later streaming services replaced once-yearly scarcity. With time, on-demand access didn't improve family gathering, it removed appointment necessity. What once lived in bodies that sat together at exact scheduled times was outsourced to watch whenever convenience, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1971 needle and thread wasn't just crafting. It was evidence children once built decoration through finger bleeding when threading popcorn kernels and fresh cranberries for 6-foot garlands meant 3 hours and multiple needle sticks. Kids didn't need pre-made garland or decorating kits to know when strands looked full. They pushed thick needles through popped kernels that crumbled if you angled wrong, felt cranberries squirt juice when the needle pierced skin, and counted 6 kernels between each cranberry to make patterns that wrapped around the tree twice. Nobody taught them pattern mathematics. They learned it by running out. The same way their parents knew uneven spacing meant you didn't plan the length correctly, and running short meant the back of the tree stayed bare because you couldn't restring what you already hung. 6-foot garland required 200 popcorn kernels and 50 cranberries. 3 hours of threading with bloody fingertips from needle slips. No shortcuts, no pre-strung options, no giving up halfway. What it meant: Christmas decoration lived in needle-pierced patience, not purchased convenience. By 1985, plastic popcorn garland and pre-strung decoration replaced real food threading. With time, artificial garland didn't improve decoration. It removed effort evidence. What once lived in fingers that bled from needle sticks and counted kernel spacing was outsourced to factory packaging, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1975 2-hour line wasn't just waiting. It was evidence families once proved Christmas commitment through physical endurance when seeing Santa required standing in Sears basement lines that wrapped around appliance departments twice. Kids didn't need reservations or time slot bookings to know Santa was real. They stood in slow-moving lines for 2 hours watching the family ahead sit on Santa's lap, heard crying toddlers and parents promising just 10 more minutes for 90 consecutive minutes, and finally reached the front, only to freeze speechless when Santa asked what you wanted. Nobody taught them patience through boredom. They learned it by standing, the same way their parents knew complaining about sore feet meant you weren't grateful for the chance, and leaving the line meant you disappointed Santa, who was waiting specifically for you. 2 hours standing in basement fluorescent lighting. One photo opportunity with no retakes. If you blinked or cried, that photo was Christmas 1975 forever. What it meant: Santa access lived in physical line endurance, not appointment slots. Christmas fads deep, and the pattern is clear. 1970s Christmas wasn't about convenience. It was about anticipation built through waiting, effort, and physical commitment. Catalogs circled for 3 months, packages arriving after 6-week uncertainty, paper chains torn daily, TV specials watched once yearly, garlands threaded with bleeding fingers, Santa lines endured for 2 hours. By the 1990s, tracking systems, streaming services, and online booking didn't improve Christmas magic. They eliminated waiting. What once lived in bodies that endured became outsourced to screens. 20 more fads remain. The 1973 Light Bright wasn't just a toy. It was evidence children once created light art through individual peg placement when 300 colored pegs and black paper templates meant hour-long construction in dark rooms. Kids didn't need tablet drawing apps or digital art tools to make glowing pictures. They pushed translucent pegs through pre-punched black paper one hole at a time, heard the satisfying click when pegs locked into the lightboard, and turned off bedroom lights to see their Santa face glow red and white. Nobody taught them pixel-by-pixel patience. They learned it by completion, the same way their parents knew leaving 40 holes empty meant the picture looked unfinished, and unfinished meant you gave up before seeing the full result. 300 pegs placed individually over 1 hour. Each peg equaled 1 pixel of light. No undo button, no autofill, no skipping tedious sections. What it meant, Christmas light art lived in peg-by-peg placement, not screen taps. By 2000, digital drawing tablets and light-up apps replaced physical peg placement. The 1970 clip-on candle wasn't just lighting. It was evidence families once risked fire for atmosphere when real wax candles clipped to dry pine branches meant Christmas Eve danger parents accepted for 1-hour magic. Parents didn't need safety regulations or fire marshal warnings to know trees could ignite. They clipped 12 small candles to branch tips using metal holders, lit each wick with wooden matches while children watched from safe distance, and stood guard with water buckets for 60 minutes before extinguishing because leaving candles burning overnight meant the house burned down. Nobody taught them risk assessment. They learned it by stories, the same way their parents knew which branches were too thin to hold candles steady, and unstable candles meant melted wax dripping on presents or flames touching needles above. 12 candles burned for 1 hour, maximum on Christmas Eve only. The 1972 Tang pitcher wasn't just juice. It was evidence children once connected Christmas to space exploration when orange powder mixed with water meant drinking what astronauts drank on the moon. Kids didn't need organic juice or nutritional labels to know Tang was special. They scooped 4 heaping tablespoons of orange powder into the plastic pitcher, watched it cloud the water when stirred with a wooden spoon, and drank it Christmas morning believing they shared breakfast with Apollo astronauts circling Earth. Nobody taught them space program connection. They learned it by commercials, the same way their parents knew Tang cost less than orange juice, and budget savings meant more money for presents under the tree. 4 tablespoons powder made 1 pitcher. Chemical orange flavor that tasted nothing like real oranges, no fresh fruit, no vitamin authenticity, no questioning whether astronauts actually preferred it. What it meant, Christmas special drinks lived in space fantasy, not ingredient lists. By 1985, fresh orange juice and health awareness replaced Tang consumption. With time, real nutrition didn't improve Christmas magic. It removed astronaut connection. The 1974 metal nutcracker wasn't just a tool. It was evidence families once worked for Christmas snacks when wooden bowls filled with whole walnuts meant cracking each one individually using lever action force. Kids didn't need pre-shelled nuts or packaged snacks to access Christmas treats. They placed whole walnuts in the nutcracker jaw, squeezed metal handles together until they heard the shell crack, and picked out walnut meat using bent safety pins because some pieces wedged deep in shell crevices. Nobody taught them hand strength calibration. They learned it by exploding, the same way their parents knew squeezing too hard meant shell fragments pulverized the meat inside, and powder meant you wasted that walnut completely. The 1973 thank you note wasn't just courtesy. It was evidence children once documented gratitude through handwriting when receiving Christmas gifts meant writing individual notes to every aunt, uncle, and grandparent within 1 week. Kids didn't need text messages or email thank yous to show appreciation. They sat at kitchen tables with ballpoint pens and lined paper, wrote, "Dear Aunt Margaret, thank you for the sweater," in cursive, and mailed physical envelopes knowing gifts stopped coming next year if thank yous weren't sent. Nobody taught them social contract obligations. They learned it by consequences, the same way their parents knew relatives called asking if the gift arrived when thank you notes were late, and late notes meant you looked ungrateful even if you loved the present. 7 thank you notes, minimum, written by January 2nd. Each note required 3 sentences minimum in legible cursive. No typing, no copy-paste, no thanks everyone group message. What it meant, Christmas gratitude lived in hand-cramped writing, not quick texts. By 2000, email thank yous and text message appreciation replaced handwritten notes. With time, digital speed didn't improve gratitude expression. It removed writing effort. What once lived in hands that cramped after writing 7 individual notes was outsourced to typed messages, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1975 Christmas morning order wasn't just tradition, it was evidence families once built anticipation through sequential opening when youngest children watched oldest siblings unwrap first, and waiting your turn meant 20 minutes of sitting on hands. Kids didn't need simultaneous present opening chaos to feel excitement. They sat in birth order circle on the living room floor, watched Dad hand oldest sibling one present, and waited while that person unwrapped slowly, showed everyone what they got, and said thank you before the next person received their turn. Nobody taught them delayed gratification through observation. They learned it by sitting, the same way their parents knew grabbing your present early meant you broke family order, and breaking order meant you opened last as punishment next year. 1 present per person per round, oldest to youngest. 5 kids meant watching 4 people open before your turn. No grabbing early, no opening simultaneously, no impatient ripping. What it meant. Christmas joy lived in watched anticipation, not individual speed. By 1995, simultaneous present opening and everyone go at once replaced sequential order. With time, faster opening didn't improve excitement. It removed observation, anticipation. What once lived in eyes that watched others unwrap while waiting your turn was outsourced to chaotic grabbing, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1970 Yule log broadcast wasn't just programming. It was evidence families once accepted simulated atmosphere when WPIX Channel 11 showed a filmed fireplace loop for 3 hours Christmas morning, and watching fake fire meant you had Christmas ambiance without real fireplaces. Parents didn't need fireplace apps or digital video loops to create cozy atmosphere. They turned on the TV at 9 a.m., watched the same log burn on repeat with classical music playing, and left it running while opening presents because the crackling sound and orange glow made the room feel warmer, even though the TV generated no actual heat. Nobody taught them simulated comfort acceptance. They learned it by repetition, the same way their parents knew the loop repeated every 17 minutes. And seeing the same log angle twice meant you'd been watching long enough. 3-hour broadcast showing one burning log on repeat. Zero interaction, zero control, zero variation, just watching filmed fire with orchestral background. What it meant. Christmas atmosphere lived in broadcast acceptance, not real flames. By 2010, YouTube fireplace videos and smart TV apps replaced broadcast Yule logs. With time, on-demand fire didn't improve ambiance. It removed scheduled ritual. What once lived in families that tuned to Channel 11 simultaneously Christmas morning was outsourced to individual playlists, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1973 Tangled Strand wasn't just storage failure. It was evidence families once paid for Christmas negligence when storing lights without winding meant spending 2 hours untangling 50-bulb strands before decorating could begin. Parents didn't need tangle-free storage solutions or light reels to prevent knots. They pulled last year's lights from cardboard boxes in the attic, saw the massive knot where all 3 strands intertwined into one impossible mass, and spent 2 hours carefully separating individual wires while testing bulbs, because cutting the knot meant buying new strands. Nobody taught them patient untangling methodology. They learned it by frustration, the same way their parents knew pulling hard instead of tracing individual wires made knots tighter. And tighter knots meant giving up and throwing away lights that technically still worked. 2 hours minimum untangling 3 50-bulb strands. Every wire had to be traced carefully. No cutting shortcuts, no buying replacements immediately, no avoiding the consequence. What it meant. Christmas preparation lived in not untangling patience, not fresh packaging. By 2005, storage reels and tangle-free systems replaced not consequences. With time, organized storage didn't improve preparation value. It removed negligence payment. What once lived in fingers that traced individual wires for 2 hours was outsourced to wound reels, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1972 paper snowflake wasn't just decoration. It was evidence children once created unique patterns through scissor cutting when folding white paper into eighths, and cutting random shapes meant every snowflake was different and unmatchable. Kids didn't need snowflake templates or cutting guides to make window decorations. They folded one sheet of white paper in half 4 times to create 8 layers, cut small triangles and curves along the edges with blunt school scissors, and unfolded to reveal patterns they didn't plan because the cutting happened blind. Nobody taught them symmetry mathematics. They learned it by unfolding, the same way their parents knew cutting too much meant the snowflake fell apart into separate pieces, and structural failure meant starting over with new paper. 8 folds created 16-layer thickness at center. Every cut created 8 identical pattern repeats. No preview, no undo, no knowing the result until unfolding completed. What it meant. Christmas decoration lived in blind cutting surprise, not planned designs. By 1990, pre-cut snowflake kits and printed templates replaced folded paper improvisation. With time, guided cutting didn't improve creativity, it removed unpredictable results. What once lived in hands that cut blind and discovered patterns through unfolding was outsourced to instruction following, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1974 Christmas Eve service wasn't just attendance, it was evidence families once marked Christmas through physical gathering when 11 p.m. candlelight services meant staying awake past bedtime and sitting through 1-hour sermons before opening presents was allowed. Kids didn't need home streaming or virtual church to participate in Christmas Eve tradition. They wore uncomfortable dress clothes, sat in wooden pews for 1 hour, listening to organ music and nativity readings, and held lit candles during Silent Night knowing hot wax dripped on your hand if you tilted the candle wrong. Nobody taught them endurance for tradition's sake. They learned it by requirement. The same way their parents knew falling asleep during sermon meant you weren't grateful for Christmas gifts coming, and ingratitude meant smaller presents next year as consequence. 1 hour minimum attendance required regardless of age. Sitting still through sermon, standing for hymns, holding lit candles without dripping wax. No leaving early, no skipping for convenience, no home streaming alternatives. What it meant. Christmas began through physical church presence, not living room worship. By 2005, online church streaming and home services replaced mandatory attendance. With time, virtual access didn't improve tradition. It removed gathering requirement. What once lived in bodies that sat in wooden pews past bedtime was outsourced to laptop viewing, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1971 vinyl Christmas album wasn't just music. It was evidence families once curated atmosphere through physical record selection when playing Bing Crosby's White Christmas meant lifting the tone arm, placing the needle in the first groove, and accepting whatever track order the album dictated. Parents didn't need streaming playlists or shuffle modes to create Christmas soundtracks. They pulled vinyl records from cardboard sleeves, placed them on turntable platters, and lowered tone arms carefully, because scratching the record meant that Skip played every Christmas for the next decade. Nobody taught them needle placement precision. They learned it by scratching. The same way their parents knew placing the needle too far right meant you missed Jingle Bells entirely, and missed songs meant getting up to manually restart the record. One album played in fixed track order, 18 minutes per side before flipping, no skipping songs you disliked, no creating custom playlists, no shuffling for variety. The 1973 5 a.m. stocking raid wasn't just impatience. It was evidence children once negotiated Christmas rules when waking, before parents meant stockings were fair game, but presents under the tree remained forbidden until family gathering. Kids didn't need permission or scheduled wake times to access stocking contents. They woke up at 5 a.m. in darkness, tiptoed downstairs to avoid creaking sounds, and dumped stocking contents on living room floor, knowing parents couldn't punish you for opening what hung on the mantel, but touching wrapped presents meant consequences. Nobody taught them boundary testing. They learned it by punishment, the same way their parents knew finding stocking wrappers scattered meant you woke too early, and too early waking meant you went back to bed, even though you'd already seen everything. 2 hours alone with stocking contents before parents woke. Small toys, candy, and tangerines explored in darkness. No adult supervision, no waiting for permission, no group stocking opening ritual. What it meant. Christmas morning lived in unsupervised exploration, not scheduled reveals. By 2000, scheduled family wake times and wait for everyone rules replaced early stocking raids. With time, coordinated opening didn't improve togetherness. It removed independent discovery. What once lived in bodies that woke naturally at 5 a.m. and explored alone was outsourced to alarm-set family gatherings, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1972 ribbon candy tin wasn't just decoration, it was evidence families once ate fragile sugar when twisted glass-like ribbons broke apart in your mouth and cutting your tongue on sharp sugar edges was accepted risk for Christmas flavor. Kids didn't need soft candies or safety warnings to enjoy Christmas sweets. They lifted delicate ribbon candy from tins carefully, bit down on thin twisted edges that shattered into sharp fragments, and let them dissolve slowly, because chewing hard meant candy shards cut the roof of your mouth. Nobody taught them careful eating technique. They learned it by bleeding, the same way their parents knew ribbon candy stuck together in humid weather, and stuck ribbons meant breaking them apart broke the whole tin into dust. One tin lasted 3 weeks if eaten carefully. Each ribbon broke into sharp sugar shards when bitten. No soft texture, no warning labels, no reformulating for safety. What it meant: Christmas candy lived in accepted mouth-cutting risk, not gentle consumption. By 1990, soft holiday candies and safety-conscious formulations replaced ribbon candy. With time, gentle candy didn't improve enjoyment. It removed consequence awareness. What once lived in mouths that learned to dissolve sharp sugar slowly was outsourced to soft alternatives, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1974 Matchbox Advent Calendar wasn't just countdown, it was evidence children once built anticipation through daily car reveals, when 24 numbered windows meant opening one per day and cheating by opening early meant you ruined the entire calendar's purpose. Kids didn't need chocolate advent calendars or digital countdown apps to track December. They opened one numbered window each morning, pulled out one die-cast Matchbox car smaller than your thumb, and added it to the growing line of 24 cars that completed December 24th. Nobody taught them one-per-day discipline. They learned it by temptation, the same way their parents knew feeling the calendar from behind to guess which car which meant you were cheating, and cheating meant they hid the calendar until December 1st next year. 24 windows opened across 24 days, one car per day in random order, no opening multiple windows, no previewing upcoming cars, no completing the calendar early. What it meant: Christmas countdown lived in daily restraint, not immediate access. By 2000, chocolate advent calendars and instant access toys replaced daily car reveals. With time, immediate gratification options didn't improve anticipation. They removed restraint practice. What once lived in hands that opened exactly one window per day was outsourced to open them all temptation, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1973 Downtown Parade wasn't just entertainment. It was evidence families once proved holiday commitment through physical attendance, when seeing Santa's float meant arriving 2 hours early to claim curb space and standing in freezing cold for 90-minute parades. Kids didn't need live-streamed parades or indoor viewing to experience Christmas spectacle. They stood on Main Street curbs in 30-degree weather, watched high school marching bands and local business floats pass for 90 minutes, and waited until the final moment when Santa's sleigh appeared, because leaving early meant you missed the entire parade's purpose. Nobody taught them cold endurance for entertainment. They learned it by freezing, the same way their parents knew complaining about numb toes meant you weren't tough enough for Christmas, and toughness mattered more than comfort. 2 hours standing in freezing weather for 90-minute parade. No heated viewing areas, no bathroom breaks, no leaving and returning to your spot because someone else took it. What it meant: Christmas spectacle lived in cold endurance, not comfortable viewing. By 2005, televised parade broadcasts and heated indoor viewing replaced downtown attendance. With time, warm viewing didn't improve parade experience. It removed physical commitment proof. What once lived in bodies that stood freezing for 2 hours was outsourced to couch watching, and a quiet human ability was lost completely. The 1972 metal frosting tube wasn't just decorating equipment. It was evidence children once built Christmas treats through hand-squeezing resistance, when aluminum tubes filled with colored buttercream required bilateral grip strength, and sustained pressure control taught fine motor precision that pre-decorated cookies eliminated. Kids didn't need store-bought decorated cookies. edible markers with ergonomic grips, or decorating kits with squeeze bottles designed for small hands to make Christmas treats special. They gripped metal frosting tubes, cylinders roughly the diameter of a quarter, with narrow metal tips crimped at one end, with both hands wrapped around the tube body, squeezed with their full palm and finger strength to force thick frosting through the tiny opening, and drew shaky lines, wobbly dots, and asymmetrical stars on sugar cookies still warm from the oven, excepting that their Santa face looked deformed, with one eye higher than the other, and a beard that dripped down to the cookie edge, because controlling frosting flow with consistent pressure meant grip strength and sustained muscle tension most 6-year-olds hadn't developed yet through fine motor practice. Nobody taught them hand pressure, calibration curves, or the relationship between squeeze force and flow rate. They learned it by catastrophic failure, the same way their parents knew squeezing too hard in initial enthusiasm meant frosting erupted violently from the metal tip in an uncontrolled blob that covered half the cookie surface and ruined the careful outline you'd just spent 30 seconds creating. And frosting explosions meant that cookie was now a mistake cookie that you had to eat immediately instead of adding to the decorated batch for the Christmas Eve church service cookie exchange, which meant starting over with a new cookie and wasting both frosting and baked goods. 24 cookies decorated over 2 hours of sustained hand-cramping effort. Each individual squeeze required calibrated hand pressure. Too little pressure and nothing came out despite squeezing until your hands hurt, creating frustration and the temptation to squeeze much harder, which then caused the explosion problem. Too much pressure and frosting exploded everywhere, coating the cookie, the table, your hands, and sometimes your shirt if you were squeezing at an angle and didn't expect the eruption direction. The correct pressure zone was narrow, firm, continuous squeeze that maintained steady flow without explosion, and finding that zone required trial and error across multiple cookies, with the first 6 or 7 attempts usually ending in either no flow or explosion before you discovered the sustainable middle pressure. What it meant: Christmas cookie decoration lived in hand-cramped effort, forearm muscle fatigue, and accepting that homemade decorating looked visibly amateur with wobbly lines and uneven coverage, not in purchasing perfect store designs with machine-applied royal icing and professional edgework. The metal tubes also taught consequence permanence through irreversible application. Once frosting touched the cookie surface, you couldn't undo it. No delete or undo function existed. If your line went wrong halfway through outlining Santa's hat, you either tried to incorporate the mistake into a modified design or accepted that this Santa had a crooked hat forever. That permanence created high-stakes decorating where every squeeze mattered and mistakes were permanent, teaching planning, intention, and accepting imperfection because correction wasn't possible. And the color mixing happened manually through tube selection sequencing. Creating a Santa required red tube for the hat and suit, pink or tan for the face, white for the beard, and trim, black for the belt, meaning you had to plan the decorating order, outline first, then fill, then details, and switch between 4 different tubes while keeping your place in the design sequence. It was a fine motor challenge that taught pressure control, failure acceptance, irreversible consequence management, and procedural planning through physical effort that left evidence in cramped hands and imperfect results. And when easy flow pens replaced metal tubes, children lost the embodied learning that came from struggling with difficult tools and accepting that homemade meant visibly imperfect, along with the satisfaction of finally mastering pressure control after decorating your 10th or 15th cookie and seeing improvement in line consistency that proved you'd learned through persistence. The 1970 analog TV dial wasn't just limited technology. It was evidence families once accepted scarcity as fundamental reality when 3 broadcast channels total meant Christmas programming on NBC, CBS, or ABC constituted your complete entertainment options, and missing the scheduled one-night-only broadcast meant waiting exactly 365 days for next year's single showing. Kids didn't need 500-channel cable packages, streaming service libraries with every Christmas special available on demand, or DVR recording capability to find Christmas content they wanted to watch. They turned the physical TV dial, a mechanical rotary knob that clicked through channels 2, 4, and 7 with satisfying tactile feedback and slight resistance. Checked the TV Guide magazine arrival earlier that week to see which network scheduled which Christmas special on which night at which exact time, and watched whatever CBS aired at 8 p.m. Thursday, December 18th, because complaining about limited options, expressing preference for a different special showing simultaneously on another network, or asking to watch something else instead meant parents turned the TV off completely as punishment for ungratefulness, and you watched nothing at all that evening while sitting in the living room with the family, but without entertainment. Nobody taught them content scarcity acceptance as a life skill or lesson in gratitude through constraint. They learned it by availability, the same way their parents knew 3 broadcast channels meant 3 Christmas specials maximum per night across all networks combined. Assuming each network aired 1 special, which wasn't guaranteed, some nights had 0 Christmas specials. And maximum meant you watched what aired at the scheduled time, or you watched whatever else was on, usually regular programming, or you watched nothing, with no fourth option existing in the universe of possible choices. 3 channels, broadcasting 1 Christmas special each per night at most. 0 choice beyond network selection, no recording the 8 p.m. CBS special for later viewing, so you could watch the simultaneous 8 p.m. NBC special in real time, no switching between simultaneous shows to watch half of each, no watching last week's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer special again because you missed a scene when you went to the bathroom, no pause function to stop the broadcast while you got a snack. And the scheduled broadcast created ritual anticipation through calendar-marking build-up. You knew Rudolph airs December 18th for weeks in advance, building anticipation through waiting and calendar awareness. Children who learned delayed gratification through calendar anticipation and acceptance of limited options, and communities that shared synchronized viewing experiences. Creating collective cultural reference points was outsourced to individual room viewing on personal schedules with unlimited content choice. Christmas special viewing wasn't just entertainment consumption, it was a lesson in scarcity acceptance, delayed gratification through scheduled waiting, and shared cultural participation through simultaneous viewing that made television a communal family activity with temporal constraints that forced togetherness. And when cable abundance and recording technology eliminated scarcity and scheduling constraints, families lost the forced gathering ritual, children lost the anticipation practice, and culture lost the synchronized shared experience that made Christmas specials cultural landmarks rather than individualized content consumption. The 1974 photo Christmas card wasn't just a greeting, it was evidence families once documented yearly updates through laborious physical mail preparation when printing 50 custom photo cards and handwriting individual addresses plus personal messages inside meant dedicating 2 full weeks of evening labor before the December 1st mailing deadline to ensure delivery before Christmas Day. Parents didn't need Facebook photo albums, Instagram holiday posts, or group email blasts to show relatives how much children had grown or to share family updates from the past year. They posed for one carefully orchestrated family photo in November, gathering at Sears' portrait studio or setting up a camera on a tripod in the living room. Attempting to get all family members looking at the camera simultaneously without anyone blinking or making faces, selected the best single image from contact sheet proofs, ordered 50 4x6 prints through Sears' photo department with 2-week processing time, then purchased matching Christmas cards with pre-printed generic holiday greetings, wishing you joy this holiday season, that included a slot for inserting the photo, and spent the next 10 evenings sitting at the kitchen table handwriting personalized messages inside each card. Dear Aunt Margaret, the kids are doing great in school this year. Tommy made honor roll and Sarah joined the volleyball team. We hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving, because pre-printed signatures or generic messages without personalization meant you didn't care enough about the recipient to invest individual effort, which was insulting to family relationships and socially unacceptable within extended family dynamics. Nobody taught them mail preparation logistics as a distinct skill set requiring project management, timeline planning, and task sequencing. They learned it by lateness, the same way their parents knew mailing cards. After December 10th meant they arrived on December 23rd, or later when Christmas was effectively over, and the recipient's holiday season had already peaked, and late arrival meant relatives assumed you had forgotten them entirely or didn't consider them important enough to prioritize, creating family relationship damage that lasted into the following year as evidence of thoughtlessness or neglect. 50 cards minimum requiring individual addressing and handwritten personal notes. 6 hours total preparation time distributed across 2 weeks of evening sessions. No sending one digital photo to everyone simultaneously through email blast. No posting a single Instagram photo that all relatives could view on their own schedule. No Merry Christmas to all our friends and family. Group text message that covered everyone at once, with zero personalization. Each card demanded individual attention. Looking up the recipient's current mailing address in the address book and confirming they hadn't moved recently, handwriting the envelope with full name and complete address including zip code, selecting an appropriate stamp, writing a personalized message referencing specific details about that person's life or your relationship history, signing with individual family member names, not just the Johnsons, sealing the envelope, and adding it to the outgoing mail stack. What it meant, Christmas Connection lived in handwritten individual effort and hours of labor that created tangible physical artifacts of relationship maintenance, not in digital convenience that reached everyone instantly with zero personalization cost. The photo cards also created reciprocal documentation exchange, where receiving cards from relatives provided your only visual update on their family throughout the entire year. You learned about Cousin Sarah's new baby, Uncle Frank's retirement, and Aunt Helen's move to Arizona through the photo and handwritten note inside the Christmas card, creating an annual update ritual where families stayed connected through once-yearly physical mail exchange rather than continuous social media surveillance. And the card display ritual transformed homes into relationship galleries. Received cards were displayed on mantels, refrigerators, or string and clothespin hanging systems, creating a visual record of your social network that guests could see and that reminded you daily of your extended family and friend connections. That physical presence made relationships visible in shared household space rather than buried in digital feeds. By 2005, email Christmas letters with attached digital family photos and Facebook photo posts with Merry Christmas to all captions replaced physical card mailing entirely. Evite, paperless post, and social media platforms sold instant sharing convenience that didn't improve family connection. They eliminated the preparation effort, handwriting labor, personalization investment, and physical artifact exchange. The 1973 wrapping paper wasn't just decorative covering, it was evidence families once accepted ceremonial waste as intrinsic to gift-giving ritual when decorative paper torn violently during opening meant throwing away materials used once for 10-second unwrapping moments, and that acceptance of ephemeral beauty taught children that some things existed purely for momentary experience rather than permanent utility. Parents didn't need reusable fabric gift bags, recyclable craft paper with twine, or eco-conscious wrapping alternatives marketed as sustainable gifting solutions to present Christmas gifts properly. They unrolled glossy wrapping paper printed with Santa faces, snowflakes, or candy canes across living room floors, sometimes spanning 8 feet of continuous paper for large, irregularly shaped gifts like bicycles or dollhouses, cut sheets to approximate size using kitchen scissors with blades that struggled through the thick, glossy coating, folded corners with varying levels of precision depending on their wrapping skill. Some parents created crisp hospital corners, others bunched excess paper and covered mistakes with excessive tape, and secured edges with strips of transparent Scotch tape, knowing with absolute certainty that the paper would be shredded in seconds Christmas morning when children tore through it with aggressive ripping enthusiasm, and the torn fragments would be gathered immediately into black trash bags for disposal without any consideration of reuse, recycling, or waste reduction, because wrapping paper was understood universally as single-use material whose purpose ended the moment the gift inside was revealed. Nobody taught them single-use acceptance as a philosophical position or economic decision requiring justification. They learned it by tradition and social enforcement, the same way their parents knew attempting to reuse wrapping paper by carefully peeling tape and folding torn pieces for next year meant you were cheap in a socially unacceptable way that signaled poverty, desperation, or miserliness. And that cheapness accusation meant extended family members judged you negatively for valuing paper cost savings over proper gift presentation standards, discussed your financial struggles or stinginess in private conversations after Christmas dinner, and potentially reduced their own gift-giving reciprocity toward your family in future years because cheapness was contagious, and associating with cheap people meant risking your own social status within family hierarchy. One roll of wrapping paper wrapped approximately 12 average-sized presents, each present used for exactly 10 seconds of unwrapping experience before being discarded completely. The 1975 Flash Cube wasn't just photography, it was evidence families once rationed Christmas documentation when 12 exposure film rolls and 4 Flash Cubes meant choosing which moments deserved permanent recording. Parents didn't need unlimited smartphone photos or cloud storage to capture Christmas morning. They loaded Kodak 110 film cartridges into pocket cameras, attached flash cubes that rotated after each shot, and took exactly 12 photos, knowing each one cost money to develop, and you couldn't preview to verify anyone's eyes were open. Nobody taught them moment selection discipline. They learned it by cost, the same way their parents knew wasting film on test shots meant missing the moment when kids opened the big present, and missed moments were gone forever because you only got one chance. 12 photos maximum per film cartridge, 4 flashes per cube before replacement, no previewing shots, no deleting bad photos, no taking 50 photos hoping one looked good. What it meant: Christmas memories lived in selective documentation, not unlimited capture. By 2000, digital cameras and unlimited photo storage replaced film rationing. With time, infinite photos didn't improve memory preservation. They removed selection discipline. What once lived in minds that chose which 12 moments mattered most was outsourced to take 1,000 just-in-case habits, and a quiet human ability was lost completely.